Welcome to another episode of Civic Cipher. I am your host, Ramses Ja.
My mother calls me Q, so I'm very comfortable with you calling me Q as well. Last name Ward.
I like it. I like it. If you love it, I like it. Sorry, that was the wrong way around. Anyway, we are back once again to broadcast balance and to defend the discourse. Special guest in the studio with us today. Sometimes contributor on the show, but full-time contributor to, the plight of Black folks and a dear friend of mine, Dr. Camilla Westenberg. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you to both of you.
And today you are with us as a former educator and as a person who has done a lot of work in the community. And one of the things that has happened recently on the show is we've had to have some conversations about critical race theory. We've had a lot of folks reach out to us through social media to tell us, that they love the show. They love the fact that we're giving some perspective to it because, there are a lot of other media outlets calling it indoctrination and things like this. And so to provide some context for folks that might not have access to that, they were very much appreciative. And today to have you here so that we can kind of flesh out a more full discussion about critical race theory is something that we've been looking forward to for a long time. So once again, welcome to the show. And I'm very, very excited about the amount of enthusiasm surrounding critical race theory. Not necessarily the enthusiasm in opposition to it, but the enthusiasm in terms of wanting to learn more. And so that's exactly what we're going to do today. So before we get there, like we normally do, we take a moment to acknowledge some ebony excellence. And today we're going to do just that in the form of acknowledging a story that we came across not too long ago that we didn't get time to put on the air, but finally we're having a little bit of time. We're catching up. This one is for Howard University, who renamed their College of Fine Arts after Chadwick Boseman. For those that don't know, Chadwick Boseman is the actor that played Black Panther. And I'll read a little bit from the article that we have here. This one comes from the Hollywood Reporter. So it says that they partnered with Netflix to also establish a scholarship, and Howard University now has $5.4 million for the Chadwick A. Boseman Memorial Scholarship, which will mainly support students in the Dramatic Arts College. Netflix is the inaugural donor of the scholarship, and this year's recipients are freshman Sarah Long, sophomore Sean Smith, junior Janie Ferguson, and senior Deidre Duncan. And the Howard president, Wayne Frederick, said in a statement, the scholarship embodies Chadwick's love for Howard, his passion for storytelling, and his willingness to support future generations of Howard students. I'm thankful for the continued support and partnership of Chadwick's wife, Mrs. Simone Ledward Boseman, and to Netflix for this important gift. So I do believe that, anytime we get a chance to honor the legacy of someone, especially someone who was able to bring so much grace and honor to the role, that now many of us hold dear and a whole new generation of Marvel fans hold dear, Black Panther, just a testament to the life that he lived. So that's going to be our ebony excellence for the day. Once again, shout out Chadwick Boseman.
He also played Thurgood Marshall, James Brown, and Jackie Robinson. So I don't want to shortchange the brother. He was
See,
played some legendary figures in cinema.
Got to keep me on my toes, man. But yeah, absolutely. He was the man, and just grateful to know that his name is going to live on.
And Howard is the place to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Howard is definitely the spot. So onward to the subject of the day, critical race theory. All right. So how about this? In your words, what would you say critical race theory is?
Critical race theory is an abstraction. It is a concept. It is an idea. It is a supposition upon which one will build based on the research that is done. It isn't anything that is necessarily concrete. It's exploratory.
Theory.
It's looking for answers. It isn't doing anything to anyone. It's trying to resolve, if you will. And the only way that you can resolve is to inspect and to look at it, and to look at it from all angles.
Okay.
And so in this instance, race, of course, is the subject that is being looked at in the educational setting and how it is being dealt with, and from a legal perspective as well, from an educational and a legal perspective.
Okay, so that's interesting. I didn't know that there was a legal component to it because all the articles that I read about are based in academia.
That is because the community has taken it and driven it in that direction. There is a segment of our community that, first, it's very political.
Indeed.
This is political, and it's being used in the political arena. And so if you think in terms of the climate today and everything that is happening in the world, the division that is taking place, it is not unreasonable for a segment of our population to take the concept out of context and say that it is teaching derogatory things about another component of society, when in fact, that isn't really the essence of what it is. It's looking at the impact of race in the classroom. And that can be in a history class, it can be in a literature class, it can be in a math class, a science class, anywhere where you are looking at race as the topic, and how in that genre there was an other. An other. And what impact has that other person, a person's had on the intersectionality of the larger scheme of things? And that, for some individuals who may not be used to looking at things critically in an exploratory fashion, but they take it on face value, are just very concrete, or what they have been told, then it's very easy for them to embrace that and say, well, this is being taught in the schools and it should not be taught. And it's making us feel bad. It's making our children feel bad. The fact is, as far as I'm concerned, critical race theory is a part of our everyday life. When you look at the insurrection and the changing of that, how it occurred and what it really represents, there is a denial and not looking at the situation critically.
Sure.
It is not being critical. And you have a population who are being told one thing, oh, they were just visiting. They were just visiting. Or they are told, well, the campaign was stolen, the race was stolen. They're not thinking critically. And anytime you are told something concrete and you don't have the capacity to take it and turn it this way and this way and that way and this way and that way, but you just look at it this way and that's it, then you're not thinking critically.
Indeed. There's to your point, one of the things that Q and I talked about, certainly around the time of the insurrection earlier this year, was that when the right was trying to rewrite what happened.
Now, that's not they were, they are.
Correct. Okay, that's a better way to say that. Yeah. At the time, they were still attempting to do so.
Okay,
but I think the word that Q used was delusion or shared delusion or something like that. Something that felt
fantastic,
and it was voluntarily. They were voluntarily participating in this shared delusion, and on some level, based on video evidence, you have to know that these are not tourists. But have managed to convince themselves otherwise by voluntarily participating in this delusion. And so I like how you said there's a segment of the population, because that segment of the population isn't all of the population. It isn't even all of one group.
Exactly.
The rest of us,
precisely.
the rest of us are able to see exactly what happened. And when it comes to things like this, like critical race theory, we're able to, like you said, take some time with it, or, a word that Q uses quite a bit is explore the nuances of a conversation, of an argument, of a, whatever it is, some sort of debate, anything like that, where, there's more than just words. There's more than just interactions. There's nuance, there's history, there's framing, and so forth. And I think that a lot of that is missing. One of the things that I found is that it's not just the media that has an issue with critical race theory. It's actually educators, particularly educators who, at least in the stories I've read, sit high above the classroom. They're not in the classroom interacting with students. They're more in an administrative capacity. And those educators, they kind of border on, like, really they're in the border, in the cross section of the educational arena and the political arena. Right.
The decision makers. Right.
But, when they get that high up, it becomes political for them. And so I love the way that you explain critical race theory, that it is an examination, and it's a theory. It's abstract. It's not concrete yet, and should be approached, for all educators, for all people who are committed to studying and educated folks. You would think this would be very, very easy conversation to have, but because I think that a lot of these administrators border on, political people, politicians, I think that's the right word.
Well, I want to equate it in another instance. Okay. We could go with critical vaccine theory.
Okay, explain.
And again, it's a matter of looking at the situation, researching it, looking at the data, and making a determination. When you have a segment of the population, again, who will not look at science, but everything that they do in life is based on scientific exploration, especially in this day and age with technology. Not to accept the fact that maybe I had better think about this as something that I need to entertain. And there are a lot of other factors as to why people may or may not. But logic would say to me, and I say that to say that I think there is a cohort of individuals in our society who are immune to thinking.
Okay.
I think they are immune to thinking. Why, I don't know. And I feel that there is an element of insecurity.
Okay.
The desire to be superior.
Sure.
But when you think all of our lives, the notion of a vaccine is not foreign. Every time I have traveled out of the country, or even here, when I began school, there are places where you have to get a vaccine to travel to that particular country to protect yourself. So the notion that this is completely removed from anything imaginable, when you have X number data showing that people have died, this phenomenal that has been taking place, it causes one to wonder, where is the intellect? Where is the thinking critically?
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because actually I'm not going to tell the story, but Q and I, we talk about some of our friends who are particularly susceptible to online facts, statistics, and so forth. So Q, I want you to, don't tell the story, obviously, but, help us to understand how a person can fall down that rabbit hole, if you will, and end up with a detached from reality, but very, very confident in their convictions.
Well, be careful with calling it online facts.
That's what I mean.
Online, it's just online information. It's not really online facts.
Sure.
And we have a generation of contrarian without a cause, people who are just opposed to what they consider groupthink. So if a large portion of the population thinks this way, they by nature have to think the other way to show us how woke they are, or to somehow come across as intellectually superior. So you all are just thinking that way because you're brainwashed. I'm thinking this way because I did my own research. And by did their own research, they just mean click through their Instagram timeline and grabbed a hold to some things that sounded interesting to them, coined it as fact, and then would start to parrot those same views as their own. It's quite discouraging, but we've spoken about before. I think the most damaging thing that happened with our prior administration was that they found a way to suspend truth, right? It's okay to have a healthy sense of skepticism, but to question everything is dangerous, right? We've gotten to a point where nothing's the truth. Water's not wet, the sky's not blue. So as we question everything and suspend a such thing as truth and fact, that's a very, very, very dangerous and slippery slope where we have no baseline to start from. So once we start a conversation, we have to first determine, okay, what is it that we all agree is fact? And if we can't start there, it makes having intellectual and forward thinking conversation very, very difficult. And it's very discouraging that in order to seem like an intellectual, we have people who are parroting and grabbing a hold to things with very, very little intellectual basis, with no actual academic research being done, right? Yeah. Just going on Google and searching doesn't mean you're doing proper research. There are people who are more qualified to do the type of research you're doing than you. They're called doctors and scientists. But once we've determined that they don't know what they're talking about, wow, I don't know where we go from there.
So that's actually something that I wanted to talk about, because what we're finding is that not only does that phenomenon exist where folks will come across, or however they happen upon this false factual information, or these false, information. But also there is a segment of the population, to quote Dr. Westenberg, that almost needs those facts. They need that to be true in order for their worldview to stay the way that it is. And so something like critical race theory, this has been a complaint from, conservative parts of this country for a long time. Well, once our children get educated, they come back and their values have changed. and this has been something that's happened for a long time. Typically, the more educated you are, the more liberal your beliefs are, the more liberal your votes tend to be, in this country, at least. And you kind of adopt the worldview, as opposed to just a, Bucksaw, Mississippi view. And this is something that the right has rallied against since forever. And so when there are these misrepresentations of what critical race theory is, they call it indoctrination, they call it all these other buzzwords that make people freak out. There's absolutely a segment of the population that sees it and is susceptible to it and says, oh my God, I don't want my children indoctrinated. And since the word association is there, then I don't want any part of it. But then there's another segment of the population that knows better, but they have it somewhere in front of them. They don't feel alone. They feel like there's other people that are saying things that they need to be true. And so, they'll share this information or, share it on their platforms or whatever it is that they do, have conversations about it as though it's an attack on America itself.
The term was presented very early on in the past administration's term. One of his press representatives, in speaking about the number of people who were there for the inauguration, said, these are alternative facts.
How about that?
That's what she said. These are alternative facts. And I listened to that. And it was so interesting because when I was in Washington shortly after that, you go into the gift shops, they're all around and everything. And there was a hat and a shirt that was interesting. It was among his paraphernalia, and it had alternative facts, and the hat had alternative facts, but the letters were superimposed together in red that said lies.
Wow.
And so this premise of alternative facts with this segment of the population has been built, it has been structured, it has been nourished, there has been a concerted effort to carry. And if you go back to some of the footage, very, very early on, the term was, these are alternative facts. But look at the numbers and look at the numbers, look at the space and look at the space. And people accepted it. Why did they accept it? It goes back to this other. There was something about here that pumped them up and made them feel, but there was also the notion of something being taken away from them.
Sure. Under the Obama administration.
Browning of America, something was being taken away from them. The notion that we can coexist isn't something that they can comprehend.
Yeah.
They just are not able, I say yet, hopefully somewhere along the way.
You and me, man, we'll get there.
Big battle. It's a big battle.
Yeah, right, we'll get there.
I don't know. I don't know.
Bless your hearts.
Sir, I am very fearful, to tell you the truth, because I have been looking, and I want to go back to what the business of the social media. As much as social media has been an asset, it also has been very, very harmful because individuals do not know how to use it. They don't know how to look at it when they get that little snippet of information and say, well, who said it? When did they say it? What was the education of the person? What was the experience of the person? Who paid for it to be said? What was the date that it was, printed?
Sure.
None of that information is asked. They just look at it, and if they see it and it fits within the mold of what they want, then that's what they go with.
Now, I have to say this, and then we're going to take a break. I have to say this. that is a human phenomenon. And it does happen on both sides of the aisle.
It does.
But there, I think, is an added element of the willful delusion, which I find to often be on the right conservative side of things. And I'll just leave that right there. We got to take a break real quick, but we are coming back with more right after this. And if you're just tuning in to Civic Cipher, I'm your host, Ramses Ja.
They call me Q Ward.
Yes, indeed. Our special guest with us today, a decades-long educator, Dr. Camilla Westenberg, is sitting in with us, and we're discussing critical race theory. Be sure to stick around because we are also going to take a look back at the Black Panthers, something that I found out that they did with respect to television. And that's going to be our Way Black History fact. And I'm really excited to share that with everyone because it's something that even I didn't know. And I know a whole lot about the Black Panthers. And stuff like that. A lot of good stuff coming your way. So again, a lot to stick around for. But first, we are going to discuss how to become a better ally. This is our Baba segment. So, Q, you remember we talked about this family in Virginia Beach where they were getting harassed by one of their neighbors. The neighbors was playing like monkey sounds out
monkey
the window.
Sounds and racist
music
comments and rhetoric.
Exactly. So for those that don't know, there's a Black family in Virginia Beach, and one of their neighbors didn't take too kindly to them moving into the neighborhood and tried to intimidate them, but everything the neighbor did was just barely legal. They didn't do anything off their property. They didn't do anything that was overtly, just subtly racist. And they played like racist music and things like that. So they weren't able to be charged for a hate crime. Well, their story obviously made national headlines. We talked about it here. And what happened is they had a protest. So activists rallied in Virginia Beach to support the Black family taunted by the next door neighbor with offensive loud noises and other racist stuff since 2017. The peaceful march, organized by Russell T., who lives outside of Richmond, was a show of community solidarity in the sleepy Salem Lakes neighborhood the Martinez family called home for nearly 5 years. So, I guess in short, if there are no legal ways to support, your Black and brown and, other oppressed individuals, marginalized, I should say, individuals that protesting, marching, that always helps. It goes a long way. And I just wanted to shout these folks, these activists that got out there and marched up and down the street, exercising their right to assemble and their right to free speech to support this family, the Martinez family, the Black family. And that is how you can become a better ally. Now, back to critical race theory. Dr. Westenberg, we talked about what critical race theory is, but I want to ask the question, and I want this to be a more focused answer, because I think that we take for granted the answer here, but there are people who are listening right now that may not know the answer to this question. So in your words, why do you think critical race theory is important?
I think by looking at it, we begin to understand human nature, and we begin to understand how we interface with each other. And when I said the intersectionality of each other, how we come together in all of our arenas, whether it's in education, whether it's in health, whether it's in government, whether it's in the environment, There are environmental issues that we're dealing with right now, as a matter of fact, decisions that are being made as to whether funds are going to be allocated
Sure.
for the environment. So, and there are differences of opinions as to what should be and should not be done, because there is a different way of knowing the world. And the only way that we're going to come together, I've always said, I believe in dialogue. You are going to have to be able to get to know each other. And if you stay in your little sphere, and everything is myopic, and you don't get a chance to expand, then there is no growth. There is absolutely no growth. And I think that through critical race theory, the research of it and the looking of it, if some individuals would dare allow it to occur, then we can find out why we harbor some of the feelings that we have. And it is okay to be different. That's the one thing that you have to understand. There is not anything wrong with being different. We can all coexist on this earth and be different. There is enough space. There is enough. And so why feel jeopardized by it? No one is going to impose on you anything. I'm not going to impose my Blackness on you. I am who I am. I love who I am. You are who you are. Love who you are.
And I love who you are too.
and there is beauty in it.
Sure.
There is beauty in it. Even with our culture, the arts is one of the areas where we do tend to sort of begin to come together.
Yes.
The arts is an area in music and in dance. Food. Look, you're hating some people, but you're going into restaurants and you're eating their food. What's up with that?
Absolutely. Well,
I mean, just think about it.
There's this, okay. Once upon a time when I was in high school, a friend of mine noted a lack of culture from a couple that got married in a McDonald's. And that always stood out to me, and it stayed with me, because he said, those people have no culture, right? I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. Q, lock in with me, man. All right, so I've also seen that there are a lot of people in this country whose almost their entire identity is wrapped up in just being from this country. And I feel bad for those people. To some degree, I believe that those people were told that they were going to grow up and be rock stars. And those people were told that they were going to live out the American dream. And they were going to be millionaires and have the wife or husband of their dreams, and on and on and on, right? And then time came, and then time went, and they more or less stayed at their same station in life, right? So, the real source of this is greed from wealthy people. But the victims are often folks from middle America, right? But since all they learned was all they know, they're left with, well, I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. America, and their whole identity is being from America. They got the truck, they got the flag, 6 or 8 places around their house. They got 6 or 8 T-shirts with the flag. This is,
and
the
they're
type.
revving down the street.
You know the type, yes. And it's these people that America has to be the greatest place in the world to them, because they have nothing else.
They have nothing else.
Right. This is their whole identity. Q, you still with me? So, okay. So this is their whole identity. This is everything that they have. And that's why I feel bad, because it's like, I get that you were told a lie from being a young child, and you grew up and this is all you had left. So you hold on to it with dear life. But the problem here is that in these people's minds, America is perfect. Now, even if they're right, America is the greatest country in the world, right? Which I wouldn't disagree with. You know, I live here. I've lived here my whole life. I love it here. I've been around the world. I've seen other countries, places, right? Q's been around the world. You've been around the world. Yeah. So we've seen other countries. Even if America is the best country in the world, it can improve. In fact, if it is the best country in the world, it should continually improve. And a critical examination of race, a constant critical examination of race, which was sewn into the very origins of this country. You know, this country is built on racism, right? And for better or worse, here we are dealing with it. But the refusal of perhaps this type of people or variations of this type of people to even acknowledge it for what it is. Again, they will call it indoctrination. They'll call it anything but what it is, which I love the way you said it, an examination of the impact of, I'm paraphrasing and please correct me. You're the educator. I'm not, but the impact of historical occurrences and examining those, the impact, plural impacts, using a racial lens,
right?
To see where we end up, why we end up there, and so forth. I think that that's something that really needs to be mentioned.
This notion of critical race theory and their opposition to it. The other, I'm going to say the other. Okay, in this context, because I've said that they are looking at us as the other.
Yeah.
But this is the other in their disposition about the world, has a strong undercurrent historically, because where it goes, it's not going to be, and I jotted down, not only based on the color of your skin, but it's going to be based on your gender. It's going to be based on your sexual preference. It's going to be based on your religion. It's going to be based on, of course, your political affiliation. This notion, this bubble of other, encompasses all of that, and the atrocities that have been and are being placed on all of these individuals, the indigenous population, the original.
Sure.
Okay. All of that is an undercurrent of what we're talking about. It's weighted. This notion of critical race theory is very heavy.
Well, you know what? On the show, we had recently, this is a few weeks ago, please feel free to go back and, if you're listening, go back and check out the episode. It was about some young women, some PhD students from Arizona State University. They had an incident on campus and that went viral. I'll explain in just a second, but these women came up on the show and discussed, what happened. They gave it some nuance, to quote a word Q uses quite a bit. So here's what happened. The video, and you can check this out at civiccipher.com, or you can check the actual video, the incident, the video that went viral. That's up on our Instagram page. You might have to scroll back a bit, but you'll see it, I promise. There's lots of comments there. What happened was there was a multicultural center on the campus, Arizona State University campus. The multicultural center was something that was campaigned for by the actual women in the video. So the women are the ones filming the video, just to take you there. And the video starts with them filming a young man. Now, the young man is white. The women are black or brown-skinned women. Um, the young man in the first young man you'll see is white in the video, and he has a sticker on his computer, and the sticker says "Police Lives Matter." Right now, he's in the multicultural center, and the women felt like he was there deliberately to try to intimidate them, and based on everything that we see, and based on growing up in that environment, seems reasonable enough, right? It was very much deliberate. So the man, or the young man rather, sets up his laptop facing the women as they're studying with the sticker on his laptop, and he has a Chick-fil-A cup and a Bass Pro Shops hat, which are again other coded racist or rather conservative like markers.
Gotcha.
And then he's with another young man who's in there as well, and the other young man is wearing some sort of anti-Joe Biden shirt. And the women engage the two white men, young white men, and ask them to leave the multicultural center, and they cite the reasons that I just mentioned. Now, the reason that I'm talking about that is because the backlash from people who felt like the women were wrong and that the young men were justified being in a multicultural center with all of those things is crazy. I mean, even just them coming up and saying their piece, I've gotten death threats. People are like, "Oh man, I know where your kids go to school." And they told me, this sort of thing. The anger that exists is alarming, right? And I understand that it's been a huge talking point on the right. And so a lot of times those are the people that see the videos and those are the people that respond to it. It's not something that we really need to share, over here, because it's kind of a normal everyday occurrence. But for them, they're like, aha, see, they're discriminating against white children. And so that's reverse discrimination and reverse racism or whatever. And, let's, whatever their issue is, right? Now, the reason I'm telling that story is because, in my estimation, had critical race theory been taught from an early age, Q, you remember we talked about I forget the age, but we were talking about your kids and my kids. And do you remember the age that we're supposed to start talking about race?
I do not.
Okay. I then don't hold me to it, but I think it's somewhere around 2 years old where we're supposed to start introducing other types of faces to our children. It doesn't matter what color our children are. They need to be introduced to other types of faces. And then, critical, not necessarily critical race theory, because that's a little bit more advanced in academia, but conversations about race should start early in the home and then, in school as early as possible, because it creates more informed students who get along better and do better when they're able to use each other's resources and share that perspective, and then also impart their view and create better friendships and alliances and so forth along racial lines, or across racial lines, I should say. Now, you've been in the classroom for okay, how many years were you a teacher? I want to make sure I get that right.
Oh my goodness, a long time. I was at Phoenix College for 30 years. That doesn't include the Murphy School District, California. I've been quite a while.
Okay, all right. I think that's enough. Once you said 30 years, obviously. So, I guess my question is, what do you think, having heard that story, what impact do you think critical race theory may have had on these students who are effectively trying to protest a multicultural center by sitting in there being antagonistic?
I think it would have had an impact. I taught African American literature.
Okay.
And I had all ethnic groups, all genders, in all religions, in my classroom, but I taught the literature, knowing part of it, and part of it being my experience growing up in the South and growing up in a segregated environment. So when I spoke to some of the things that were happening about not being able to drink from a water fountain or use a restroom or try on a hat or try on shoes, that was my experience. That was my life growing up. And when I did that, it was never with the intent of making any other white person, Hispanic, person from Asia, anyone, to feel guilty for anything. It's just, this is the fact of my life. That was for real. That was for real. And they would have to accept that. You know, they may try not to, but you have to accept that. That's the reality that did occur. And yes, maybe some of your ancestors imposed that on me, but that's not you. How dare I hold you accountable for something that someone else did? So my larger purpose in my mind was to share the experience through the literature so that hopefully we can come together understanding, not hating each other. Yes, this occurred, but I don't blame you. I would never have let an African-American student in my class make a white student in the class feel guilty. Never, ever, ever would it have gone down that way.
Real quick, as a student who took your class, I know that to be true. Please continue.
It would not have happened. And so I think that, yes, it would have helped if those young men, I don't know their history, I don't know where they've been, but I do believe that once you find yourself in an adversarial situation, and that's what that was.
Sure.
Now, there's an age difference here. I'm 73 years old.
All right.
These are some young ladies. I went to ASU too. And I experienced racism in the classroom with an instructor. And I knew how to handle the situation with poise and with dignity and in a quality way, exceptionally well.
I believe
and
that.
It wasn't, I didn't, not in the class. And there have been other instances where you have to find the time and the place. And sometimes the moment
to address it
is not the time and the place.
Right.
And you can flip the switch. You can flip the switch. If you're about equality, then be about equality. Let's keep it real.
I don't think that
if you're about equality, I'm gonna go there.
Go ahead.
Let's be about equality.
Sure.
I can sit next to you. Whatever color you have, you may have not have welcomed me over there, but I'm going to be better than you are. Or I could just not give you what you want.
Not playing to their hand.
Just not give it to you. Walk out, go in and demand the opportunity to sit down and dialogue about the situation.
Well, extremely well said.
Now, I don't know how that's going to be felt by those who, but again, this is, I got age on me.
Hey,
I got a few gray hairs up here, and that's so, because I will always keep my integrity.
And I know that to be true. Well, what we're going to do now is wow, that was heavy. We're gonna check out our way Black history facts.
And you know what?
So
I do want to say this too.
sure.
I would be delighted to continue the dialogue with everyone that was involved. I do believe in dialogue.
Yeah, I sent over invitations to everyone that I saw and everyone that had something to say to come up on the show and say their piece as well. So, way Black history facts. So today we're reading, this article came from, I took a lot of material from a lot of places. Q, I want your reaction first. But this particular part of this reading, it comes from dangerousminds.net. So somewhat like top basketballers before Michael Jordan, the reputation of Norman Lear's sitcom, The Jeffersons, suffered somewhat by poor timing and the shows that came after it. Cheers, Seinfeld, and others are regularly lauded as the greatest sitcoms of all time. But The Jeffersons, whose impressive 253 episodes were spread across a whopping 11 seasons from 1975 to 1985, never seems to get mentioned with the same respect. If you eliminate animated series and long-running staples from the dawn of TV history, the longevity of The Jeffersons puts it in a special category with 2.5 Men, with 262 episodes, Cheers, with 275 episodes, MASH, with 256 episodes, Frasier, with 264 episodes, Married with Children with 258 episodes, Happy Days with 255 episodes. At a minimum, The Jeffersons is arguably the greatest put-down show of all time, and it never would have happened but for an intervention by the Black Panthers. Here we go. Norman Lear, creator of a fair portion of the most successful sitcoms of the 1970s, including All in the Family, Sanford and Son, One Day at a Time, and Maude, is the subject of an upcoming PBS American Masters telecast under the title Just Another Version of You. Remarkably, since 1970s, Lear has become more or less synonymous with the introduction of ethnic diversity in American TV, as well as the foregrounding of what might be termed a liberal consciousness in televised comedy. Remarkably, the creation of The Jeffersons was a direct outgrowth of an intervention staged by 3 members of the Black Panthers political organization at some point during 1974. A trio of angry revolutionaries went to Lear's office to complain about the, quote, garbage, end quote, they were seeing on TV, specifically Lear's show Good Times, which ran from 1974 to 1979 and focused on a Black family in the projects of Chicago. You wouldn't think that the Black Panthers would object to a popular sitcom calling attention to poverty in urban America, but they wanted to see a broader palette of Black America on TV. And then the next show was The Jeffersons. And then the same person, I think he had a hand in, because I read a few articles, like I said, I think he had a hand in creating The Cosby Show. I know that's a bad word around here, but the show had its intention was to show Black people in a positive light. The same with The Jeffersons.
Sure. The 2 professionals.
And, you know, we've been talking a lot about examining our history. You know, opponents of critical race theory, really, they want slavery to be renamed as like slaves to be renamed as workers so that children aren't upset by the history of this country, right? It's sort of like whitewashing it and not trying to use that term to be like
lying.
Right, lying. There you go. Thank you for being here because you keep it real. But yeah, now, Q, you know that the Black Panthers are often considered a terrorist organization, but you also know by a certain segment of the population, but you also know that the Black Panthers did a lot of good. Now, how does this story hit you? What's your immediate thoughts? First, did you know about this?
I absolutely did not know about that. And the Black Panthers are sometimes intentionally miscategorized as a terrorist organization. Let me say that properly, because most of us have enough sense to know that that's grossly untrue. So I want to try to put a bow on what we've been talking about and what you just brought before us. Imagine being a member of the Black Panther Party or a member of the civil rights movement in the 1970s and being an academician of any sort and trying to bring some levity to the disproportionate and disparate social, civil, legal, and criminal outcomes for Black people as opposed to their white counterparts. Enter critical race theory and trying to use data to make sense of the very, very obvious slant of racism and white supremacy on said outcomes, be it television, be it social, be it criminal, be it legal. All of those outcomes were slanted by white supremacy and racism. Now, in the way that if you started dating someone and they told you they had been in an abusive relationship, they would expect sad empathy from you. Oh my God, I'd never treat you that way. And it would give you some framework from which you know how to handle this person. Now imagine instead of showing empathy and using kindness and grace, that you were overcome with guilt and got angry and totally marginalized, erased, and discounted that other person's experience. That's what the last 100 years have been like for people that look like us in this country. We are not trying to make white people feel guilty for the sake of it. It's just like, hey, look at all of this information that shows that because we look like this and because of what our country is founded on, life has been disparate and disproportionately harsh to our people. And we're not seeking revenge. We're not saying that we wish your life was as hard. Just realize that this is the reason that ours has gone this way. And it's not to make you feel guilty so that you can angrily uprise and fight against that education. It's just to simply say, hey, man, these are the reasons why life has played out the way that it has for us. And we appreciate a little bit of grace and a little bit of empathy as a result.
Let me make sure that I mention this before we end the show. I think you might have gave me a book or a passage, and I forget the name of the author, but there was this analogy saying that, you know, we, the current inhabitants of this country, are in a house. The country is the house. And the house has a couple cracks. It's a beautiful house. We love it, you know, but there's a couple cracks, foundation. We need to fix the roof, these things. And, you know, we're all in here together. And we're not blaming anyone for the way the house is right now, but we do have to acknowledge that there's some problems, some things that need to be fixed in order for the house to be everything that it can be. And it's all of our problem together. And it might not affect your bedroom, but it does affect the overall house and the condition of the house. And I love that. And so we're going to end it right there. Once again, thank you for tuning into Civic Cipher. I'm your host, Ramses Ja.
They call me Q Ward. Sometimes they say Quinton.
Yes, indeed. And hit the website, civiccipher.com, to download this and all previous episodes. Of course, I want to thank my guest, Dr. Camilla Westenberg, for sharing the microphone with us today. And until next week, y'all. Peace.